not being spotlit anymore after the pandemic. It's hard to look at yourself, even though that's what I do for a living is I help people like take a deep look at themselves. But this kind of look is a little too much sometimes. So thank you all for making the time to come. I'm going to close a little window behind. There we go. And Jessica, I will pause periodically for questions, but if there's something relevant that you want to interrupt me, I am totally interruptible. So don't worry about that at all. So today we are here to talk about there is no such thing as bad weather. And I want you to know that is not true. There is bad weather. A hurricane is bad weather. A monsoon is bad weather. A blizzard, a landslide, these are bad weather days. So we're talking about the kind of bad weather where people sort of say like, oh, I am so sick of every weekend, the Arctic vortex coming in, and then I'm trapped in the house all weekend. The weather's just been so bad. And it's like, all right, that is not bad weather. That is actually cold weather. And so we're going to be talking a little bit today about the fact that really when people talk about bad weather, they're talking about bad clothing choices. So there'll be a fashion component to our work together today. I remember several years ago, actually probably longer than that now, Vermont is a very funny place to live. So I was watching the local news and the meteorologist comes on and she said, and tomorrow we are going to have some weather. And I sort of thought, well, we have weather every day. But when you're from Vermont, you know exactly what a meteorologist means when they say we're going to have some weather, even though there's no weather called weather, it's a particular style of weather. But in Vermont, the Vermont standard is, we're going to have some sun, we're going to have some wind, we're going to have some rain, we'll have fog this morning, chance of, golf ball size hail in the afternoon, snow this evening, dropping temperatures throughout the day. That's basically what a meteorologist means by we're going to have some weather. But we are going to talk about why is it so important to not believe that there is bad weather, but maybe believe that you've made poor clothing choices. Because that's usually what bad weather means. I remember being at the airport once. Do you remember when we would go to airports? Oh, I remember that. Must have been back in the 19th century. And Madeline Kunin, she was ambassador at the time, and she was still married to Arthur. And she was getting out of the car in front of me and getting her suitcase out. And she had this beautiful, and she was all dressed up. She was on her way back to Switzerland. And she was all dressed up with this beautiful navy blue wool coat that went down to, mid-calf. And she pulls her suitcase out of the back seat and she shuts the door, says goodbye to Arthur, and turns around, and the whole back of her has white salt. Because when she turned to say goodbye to Arthur, her whole backside brushed the car. And I thought, even in Vermont, the ambassador is covered with salt. So we do, but she made a good clothing choice, although she won't need that coat on the plane. But sort of we do have to think about how we dress, not whether we go outside or not because of bad weather. Today, where I'm standing, looking out my window, it is what we would call sunny weather. If you can look out your window and see sunny weather, this would be one of those days that you could make some clothing choices and go outside. Yeah, just like that. Just go outside. It's not that hard. And, trust me that I am not one of those people that, I have clients that do winter camping, like tenting camping, and they love it. And I think, you're just weird. Humans don't do that. So I know when it's 10 degrees and with the wind it feels like 3 degrees, that going outside does lose some of its appeal. And what we've talked about in the past is that sort of our resolve to do things during the pandemic has been compromised even more. So we're talking about trying to make better clothing and better activity choices. Now, these are not Bernie's gloves. These are my mittens that my neighbor made me. Why she made them for me, I don't know. I complimented hers and she said, "You want a pair?" I said, "No, not really. I have plenty of gloves." And she said, "Well, I have to have something to do during this pandemic." So I said, "Okay, you can make me a pair." Yeah, she made me a pair, two pair. But these were the clothing of my youth. Like you would put on hand knitted, which is code for freezing cold, hand knitted mittens that would get all soaking wet from making snowballs or building forts or sliding or sledding or however you pronounce it. We had jackets that did not ward off water and didn't resist any kind of wind at all. Same with snow pants. We had sort of like rubber boots. Like, can you imagine putting like your socked foot into a rubber boot? And yet we still lived. I mean, I'm still here. I got through. I got through this time. I remember actually going through these kinds of mittens really fast on a rope tow. For you young people, you probably have no idea that we used to just hold on to a rope and get pulled up a mountain. Well, that's a whole other thing. But we have clothes now that can handle this kind of temperature. That we have the technology. Think of when you see toddlers, all bundled up. They are awfully cute, aren't they? When they sort of look like they can't move, but they're warm. And so, I'm not suggesting that we all need to wear those same outfits, but we could be doing better than what we're doing. So you don't need a lot of money to get outdoors in the winter relative to clothing, because clothing in winter is about layers and gaps. So loose clothing is preferred over tight clothing, which goes perfect with a pandemic because all of us are slaves to loose clothing now because no one wants to put on anything tight. Even this looks tight, but actually it's quite loose. But when your clothing is loose, it allows for your body heat, which remember, you're 98.6, so you're almost 100 degrees. And if you sort of think like you would never turn your thermostat up to 100. So you are actually built to be very warm, but it's about trapping that warmth. And so when you have lots of layers on, like 3 or 4, and it's somewhat loose, it's not binding to you, that you will trap in warm air and you will stay warm. The problem with tighter clothing is that, it's so funny, like I don't know if as a psychotherapist I've ever talked this much about clothes, but with tighter clothing, you get sweatier, and then the sweat, especially those wick away things, the sweat will actually get cooled by the outdoor air, and then you'll have that coldness next to your body. So loose is better, and it works perfect because all of us are probably a little bigger, and so we kind of like loose stuff now. So think dense, loose clothing, and most of us have some of that. When I go skiing, when I go out for a run at lunchtime, it's sort of like a t-shirty shirt, and then a long sleevey kind of shirt, and then kind of a sweatshirty thing, zip up thing, and then a light jacket. And I am too hot all the time, even if I'm running and it's 5 out. It's just a lot of clothes. All right. What about your face? People sort of say it's so cold it hurts my face, and sort of like, okay, there is clothing for your face. Yes, really, there is. There's even something called a baklava. No, that's that Greek dessert. What's it called? Balaclava. Balaclava. Who came up with that? I think it's a Turkish word. Actually, baklava is Turkish too. But that's just sort of this thing you put over your head, and you can pull it up in front of your face. It's somewhat tight, but not really. It's breathable tight. But you can also, I have a neck warmer like this, of this kind of stuff. I pull that up. What's that? Turtle fur you know, a piece of turtle fur keeps your face nice and warm. Then you might not have to wear a mask if you're out. I mean, that is one of the advantages of being outside in the winter is you don't have a lot of competition like you did in the summer. And so you could actually walk around probably for an extended period of time without a mask. But let's be honest, there are those people, and we probably secretly dislike them inside, that they go camping in below zero temperatures. They do ice climbing. And I had a client last week who told me he and his girlfriend skinned up Madonna Mountain at 10 o'clock at night. And it's like, what? Like, why? Like, why would you do that? I'm not even quite sure what skinning is. But these people are genetic irregularities, you know, so we can just sort of not compare ourselves to those people. Let's compare ourselves to the people that, you know, prefer to stay indoors on a really cold day, because that's probably a little bit more like we are. And then we'll let the people, the extreme winter enthusiast, continue, you know, their forward march and maybe inspire us. But I mean, I suppose I am a little bit jealous because, yeah, maybe you can go camping and stay warm below zero. I'll think more about that. I'll let you know. But what's hard to get us outdoors in this kind of weather is some of what we talked about last time, which is motivation. And there's COVID has really made motivation even more challenging. It just seems like a lot of effort. That's what people end up feeling, and that there's just a lot of effort. And that effort feels insurmountable at times, you know, and so I get it. COVID snacks on our motivation. It nibbles away at our desire to do things, even the things that we like to do and that we know are good for us. I'll give you an example. Last week I had a client told me he wasn't doing very well, young guy, like in his early 30s, and he's a skier. And a skinner, whatever that is. I asked him, I said, oh, how come you don't think you're doing so well? I said, it's been so beautiful. Have you been skiing? And he's like, well, see, that's like the problem. Like last week I had Friday off and I should have gone skiing, but instead I said, well, what did you do? He said, I stayed home and I read a book and drank coffee. And I said, well, that's not a terrible thing. He's like, I know, but I really like to ski. And the ski season will end at some point, and so I could read anytime. And I said, well, what was more appealing about the book and the coffee? And he said, because I didn't have to get dressed, and I didn't have to drive to a ski area, and I didn't have to wait in a line. And this is somebody who lives to ski in the wintertime. So I think that's an example of, you know, I think it's that, remember we talked about, it's that kind of weird combination of, you know, it's part anxiety and part depression, this kind of restless exhaustion that we feel from COVID. And so I think COVID just kind of nibbles away at motivation. And think about it, if I'm not really that inclined to want to go outside when it's 3 degrees, you know, in COVID times, I'm totally justified to stay in my sweatpants and lay on the couch and eat snickerdoodles, you know, or some such thing. All right. So if winter really isn't your best friend, COVID is going to make it seem more like an enemy, for sure. Jessica, any questions?
Nothing thus far. It sounds like we definitely have a mixed bag of people who are loving the winter and those who are sitting on the couch.
Yep. Yep.
And so what keeps us from doing things that we know are good for us? Are there any tricks for getting to bed earlier? There always seems to be one more thing to take care of, or I get sucked into the social media scroll.
Yeah. I think some of, so kudos to you people that love winter and love getting out in winter. I hear from a lot of parents who have kids, like kids probably under teen years, that are so thankful for the outdoors any season, because they just sort of feel like to be trapped in the house with their kids is, painful. But then there are people that like to skate, there are people who like to sled, there are people who like to ski, there are people who like to just walk. I'm looking right now at the bike path out my window, and lots of cross-country skiers, lots of people walking with their poles, some people walking their dogs. So it is nice to get outside. But why do I get sucked into social media? I think some of that's exhaustion. I think that's some of just really kind of, but I also think the way we've been using social media during the pandemic has been to regulate anxiety. I feel like there's a real anxious component to the scroll, and it doesn't matter if you're scrolling, there are people that are on Pinterest all the time, people that are on Reddit, people, I have a client who told me he's addicted to Wikipedia. I don't even know if that's possible, but if he says he is, he is. But then there's the things like, Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and those things. But there is, I think that the lack of connection with other people, coupled with the effort it takes when we're already sort of feeling fatigued, and then the way COVID has nibbled, like Pac-Man, nibbled away on our motivation. And then there's consistency. So if you would like to be somebody who goes out every day, you would have to probably practice going out every day till it started becoming a routine. Because if it's sort of a occasional thing you do, like sometimes on a cold day I'll go out if I have a good reason, then that's going to make scrolling social media a lot easier. So I hope that that's helpful, but I think it's doing the thing you don't want to do, which that's what I do for a living, is I encourage people to do things they don't want to do. Why don't you tell your boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I don't really want to. I don't want to get into a fight. Why don't you, and so I'm a big believer that awkward and uncomfortable are not causes of death. You hardly ever read an obituary that said Mary Smith, 32, of Williston, died suddenly after being very uncomfortable, taking a walk with her friend on a cold day. Like, it's just discomfort. It's just discomfort. And, the truth be told, it's kind of nice to go inside when you've been outside. That whole like, oh, it's so nice and warm in here. Oh. We do sort of like that. And so if you're inside all the time, you don't really get the bennies of that. All right. Today, I want to tell you why it's so important to go outside, which would require you to believe that there aren't really bad days, just maybe bad clothing choices for the thing you're going to do outside. But to move your body, to shake your butt, to elevate your heart rate, anything above the couch level. So if your couch level heart rate is 62, even getting it up to 75 can be very helpful. We're not even talking about going to the 150s or the 160s. Just get your heart rate up from the couch level. All right, so these are some reasons why it would be good for you to be outdoors more. Number one, in my mind, because I get to put them in the order I wanted them in, so this one I would call number one. Your body burns more calories outside in the cold than on the couch. Now, I don't know about you, but I like food. And the only reason, I'm going to be very honest, the only reason I exercise is not because it's good for me, because I don't actually like it at all. I do it so I can eat more. Because if you don't exercise, then you have to say things like, oh, that cheesecake looks so good, but I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. And I want to say, bring the cheesecake every time. So I go to the gym, not anymore, or I'll go for a run, which is sort of what I do now, just so that I can eat more food. So the combination of I can eat more food, and if I play outdoors, I burn more calories in the cold, to me, this is a win-win. And I'd be hard pressed to see to think that any of the 100+ people that are on right now, that someone is sort of saying, I think I would prefer to not burn any more calories. I've been just burning so many that I really got to just slow down on the calorie burn. I haven't heard that in 11 months. So I think you'd be okay to burn some calories.
You're getting a lot of yeses, Kevin.
All right, good. Yeah. To me, that's, yeah. I'm not a dedicated anything outdoors. It's really just for food. I'm like my cat who just waits for food. Second, we absorb vitamin D from the sun. Why is that important? It helps with bone health, helps with disease prevention. It will help you heal more quickly. It helps with mood. Some of the things that we struggle with in terms of regulating mood in a state that's cold and dark a lot is vitamin D and the Bs. I think 6 and 12, B6 and B12, that we tend to get depleted in those things. I remember one year I was sort of really dragging butt during the winter, and my naturopath said, well, let's start giving you kind of weekly shots of vitamin B12. And so I'd pop in and she'd like zap me in the arm, and it was amazing. Sort of like it gave me a bit of a boost. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so don't go do that. But she is a doctor, and so that was her recommendation. But we do get a lot of benefits from being outdoors in the air, especially the vitamin D. Being outdoor in winter, in particular, helps us with seasonal affective disorder and decreases our fatigue. So if you sort of think of SAD, it's a funny word, but if you think of seasonal affective disorder, often caused by the lack of light, although I have to tell you, over the 30 years I've been practicing, I have had some clients that have had summer seasonal affective disorder, that they come alive in October and sail, kind of mood-wise, energy-wise through the winter. And they hate the summer, they hate the heat, they hate feeling trapped indoors, they don't like summer clothing, they don't like shorts, they don't like skirts, they really like winter. So seasonal affective disorder isn't just about sort of the winter stuff, but that's sort of what we get up here. But being outdoors, especially if it's snowing out or there is snow outside, we get the reflection of light off the snow, which actually sort of really kind of nurtures our desire, our need to have more light. Plus getting our heart rates up gives us a little more adrenaline, a little more dopamine, a little more endorphins, and those things help us fight kind of that depression that comes along with seasonal affective disorder. Questions, Jessica? Because I have a long list of the health benefits of this thing called Go Outside.
Yes, we do have quite a few questions.
Okay.
I will say, aren't you guys already noticing it with the increase of daylight? It's been so fabulous just having a little bit extra daylight. I think one of the big questions that's coming through, and this can be for those who it's hard to get outside, but also for those who are active people and do get active in the outdoors right now. How do you counter the anti-motivation or without the support of those outside my household or inside? So I guess what is being asked is how to deal with maybe those people that aren't so encouraging of the embracing the outdoors and getting outside to move your body.
Well, we do, as humans, we do tend to pick people that are like us. Like if you kind of like being indoors in the winter, chances are you don't hang out with a lot of extreme skiers. You probably hang out with people who like to do puzzles or who like to read or who like to do projects. And probably the ski people probably hang out a lot with people who ski. So that's some of what you're up against. If in your house, you sort of feel like there's a lot of people like me in this house, and then I have a lot of friends that are like me, this would probably require you to find some people that aren't like you. Now, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who lives down the street, she lives alone. She's probably in her early 70s at this point. And she says, I just know it would be good to get out and walk. And she said, and sometimes I just don't feel like it. And she said, and I feel so guilty. I love when people use that word. I feel so guilty. It's like you didn't do anything. That I look out and I see people walking and I feel like I should be out there walking. And she said, like, there's this group of ladies that walk every morning. Like I see them at 6:30 is what kind of when they're walking by my house. And they've been walking for years and they walk all 4 seasons. And so I said, well, why don't you go out one day and ask them if they would mind if you start walking with them? And then have them, and so she did. And how they do it is the first one starts walking and walks to the house of the next one, and then those two walk to the house of the third one, and then those three walk to the house of the fourth one. So they would be coming to get her. She didn't have to meet them anywhere. They would come and get her. And she said, my anxiety about saying no or just not answering the doorbell makes me get up because I don't want to disappoint them. And she said, but then, after the walk, I feel really glad that I went. So she found a way to sort of feel tricked into walking every day by having someone else be not in charge of it, but someone else helping facilitate it. So if you know some of those people that do better outdoors than you do, then can you get them to trick you? I'm going to say it. Make you feel bad for not doing stuff with them. Like even harass you. Like, oh, Jessica, I don't really feel like going out for a walk. It's just been so cold. And then Jessica would have to say sort of like, don't be a wimp. Like, I will be there in 10 minutes. Like, get on some clothes. It's like, I don't have anything warm enough. Layers. Don't you listen to yourself in those presentations? Layers. Wear layers. I will be there in 10 minutes. Then I'm going to start feeling bad. Like, she's going to drive over here to go on a walk with me. And I'm going to say, I told you I'm not going to go. So you can kind of get somebody to help you do this.
Be there in 10 minutes.
I'm busy until noon.
I'm going to chime in with another question because it's very similar to the track that you're on,
Okay.
having that peer support. But there's some other healthy habits. Specifically, people are asking about diet and healthy eating. So what are some other maybe mental skills or strategies to stay on track with making those healthier choices? Maybe whether it be food or going to bed at the right time, things that you can do with your mind or strategies to set yourself up for success with those healthy habits.
Yep. Well, certainly the getting outside every day at some point would be useful. That would be a healthy habit to develop. The food stuff is hard. I mean, I think we all start thinking about meatloaf and cottage cheese in November. I mean, not cottage cheese, mac and cheese. No one thinks of cottage cheese in November. What a weird statement. Mac and cheese. Like we want comfort foods, and we tend to be drawn toward foods that are have a lot of carbs. And the reason we crave carbs is that the brain is a carbohydrate hog. It needs a lot of energy to function. And so when we get a dip in energy, we grab for carbohydrates or for sugar, like a candy bar, that we're craving sort of more energy. So if you think of winter depletes our energy, COVID depletes our energy, we are going to be drawn more to comfort food, which tends to be code for food that's not that good for you. It's funny that we've turned it into comfort, like ribs, our comfort food. It's like, ribs are barbecued fatty things sometimes, depending on which ones you get. So the healthy habits, if you're drawn to sort of wanting to make poor food choices, my guess is that if you were moving your butt outdoors more, you would make fewer poor food choices. I think that just would come naturally. Like, how many runners do you know that end their run with a cigarette? Like, it just doesn't make sense to be working your lungs for 5 miles and then to light up a Marlboro. So we don't tend to do it. So my guess is if you were outside for a half hour, walking briskly, going sledding with your kids or grandkids, that chances are you're probably not going to go in the house and eat the whole pan of brownies. You might try for something else first. The sleep thing, that is hard, So on the weekend when I ski sometimes, I'd like to get to the ski area early to get the runs in before all the snowboarders come and move the snow around and make it hard for me to ski. But that means leaving my house at 6:45, 7, and I sort of feel like on Saturday I don't really want to get up that early. I do that like Monday through Friday. Why do I want to do that on Saturday? And so it does mean sort of making better choices around bedtime. But some of the staying up late I've noticed when talking to clients is some of it is dread of the next day. So there's kind of like this idea that if I stay up late, then tomorrow doesn't come. I can kind of put off tomorrow. When in fact, if you stay up watching TV till 1, it means tomorrow's going to come and you're going to be tired. But some people I've noticed are staying up late because it's that anxious restlessness, that it's just like, I feel like there's things I should do and I don't feel like doing anything and I'm just tired of all this and I want it to go away. And so why not watch Conan, Yep. All right. So let's look at some other things that being outdoors does. It increases your creativity and your ability to focus. So if you've been feeling kind of spacey and forgetful and dull, like a butter knife as opposed to a steak knife, getting outdoors will increase your ability to focus and increase your ability to be creative. How about being outdoors lowers your blood pressure? Like anyone got a problem with some lower blood pressure? I mean, some people have low blood pressure, but sort of like, how about reducing stress? Being outdoors reduces stress. In fact, I read a study that said looking at trees helps you reduce stress. Looking at them, not touching them, not climbing them, not hugging them. But looking at trees helps reduce levels of cortisol and adrenaline. And so I talked to a client yesterday who said, he's a school teacher, and he said, I feel so bad for some people. He said, I get to teach while looking out my window at just a bunch of trees. And he's like, and I know that some of my kids that I teach don't get to see any trees. And that was not me prompting him about the tree comment. He came up with the tree comment on his own. How about being outdoors helps slow down aging? Now, we're not talking about cryogenics. Yeah, that's what it is. People who think Michael Jackson and Elvis are still alive, but they're frozen. But, actually freezing, getting your face cold, constricts blood vessels, reduces inflammation. You can actually reduce wrinkles. And so, for some of the people like my age, in the presentation, sort of like a few less wrinkles is never that much of a problem. You can keep that youthful glow, and who doesn't want a youthful glow on Zoom? You don't have to use the ring. You can actually just have your own youthful glow. Even though you're sick of looking at yourself, would you be less sick of looking at yourself if you actually looked better to yourself? Just a thought. Being outdoors improves brain function. It gives your brain the goal of get me out of this freaking cold day. If you sort of think about it, it's kind of funny to sort of think like, well, why would I want to give my brain, that job? And it's like, I know, but imagine that would be a good job for your brain to figure out. It's like, how am I going to get warm? How am I going to? The brain is a decision-making, problem-solving machine. That's really all it knows how to do. and it's very user dependent. So if you give it good assignments in terms of decision making and problem solving, it will help you. If you don't give it good tasks, it will just make up tasks on its own. And that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. Is just sort of like I wasn't giving my brain anything good to work on. So it came up with the idea, what if we're still doing this in 2023? And then that just like sucks the life out of me. It's like, well, give your brain something else to do. Like go out for a walk and like freeze and be like really annoyed that you're outside and it's so cold and that you made poor clothing choices. And then have your brain help you figure out how to get warm on your way home so that you can go back in the house and get on the couch. So that could be a brain activity. Jessica, anything popping up?
Lots of comments of doing snow face plants to help support those not creating new wrinkles.
Wow. I don't know that one.
We did have a question a little bit further back about knowing there is, it's hard to meet people right now. And if you move to a new location or whatnot, to get that social connection or that peer support group to help you with your healthy habits or to get outside for those walks. So any strategies or suggestions on how to find connection?
Yeah. We're all on some level, even the introverts that are working at home and loving it and were working remotely even before COVID, they are struggling with the fact that I can't just go out to lunch with somebody, or I can't go, kind of to my class reunion. I can't go kind of see my relatives in Massachusetts. So it's really, this lack of connection is really impacting all of us. We just weren't meant to hunker down this long, this long with the same people, over and over and over again. So and this will be hard for many of you to consider, but I would like you to at least consider it, that if we're all sort of in the same boat, doesn't it make sense to just go first? Like, what about getting on Front Porch Forum, and just saying, anyone want to walk with me? Like it's kind of, it's like a little weird. I'll give you that. It's like, kids will go up to other kids at a playground and say, hi, my name is Kevin. Do you want to be my friend? So it is a little weird if you're like 47, to say, hi, my name is Kevin. Do you want to be my friend? But everyone's a little hungry for more than what they've got, and we do get sick of seeing the same people, especially because the people that we're sort of quarantining, hunkering down with, isolating with, because we're all sort of doing the same thing, we don't even have anything interesting to say to each other. Can't say where you've been, what you've done, new restaurant that you love, planning a trip to, Mexico. Where in Mexico? Oh, I've never heard of that place. Is it on the coast? Is it inland? Like, pretty much it's like, how are you? And it's like, good. How are you? It's like, fine. That's the extent of our interest. So imagine sort of on Facebook, on Craigslist, on Front Porch Forum, kind of making yourself a little vulnerable, maybe even speaking a truth. Like I feel like I've been holing up in my house too much and I'm interested in sort of seeing if anybody wants to hang out outside and go for a walk. I don't know if Dr. Levine will be okay with that, but I'm saying it might not be a bad idea. You could get really creative and sort of, so I have a client who, she and her sister, they get the same book at the library and they read it at the same time. And then when they go for walks, they talk about the book. So that actually gives their walk a purpose. So it's like a one-person book club. But I think if you don't have people, if you're new to your area, if you don't know your neighbors, if you don't have family that you can go see, you could, the worst thing, remember, I'm the guy who encourages people to be awkward and uncomfortable. That's my job for a living. That's sort of like, if you put yourself out there on Facebook or on Front Porch Forum, and someone thinks you're weird, it's totally survivable. Even if they start talking to other people about it. Hey, did you notice that person, in the New North End that was sort of saying they were looking for someone to walk with? Like, how pathetic is that? Like, I can't believe it. I would never do something like that. Like, if this is the worst thing, folks, that ever happens to you, is that someone thinks you're a little weird for asking for people to go walk with you, you will survive that. Trust me. Trust me. Really trust me on that one. That's not a biggie. So you will have to be vulnerable. If you see people walking, hi, can I walk with you? It's a little like being at the playground. Can I play with your trucks too? It's like, yeah, we encourage kids to do this. I don't know why we can't encourage each other to do it. So,
I'm going to chime in with one other question before it gets lost, because there's a lot going on in the chat now.
Okay.
I'll share two because I think they could be slightly related. There was some questions now about just getting seen by a mental health practitioner right now during COVID, how to either A, go about that, or B, is there even availability and how to overcome that barrier? And then lots of questions around how strategies or how to overcome that anxiousness and restlessness that it sounds like all of us are feeling inside.
Yep. So, so anxiousness and restlessness, mindfulness practices, meditation. I'm not even a big kind of meditation person. I'm too antsy and too frenetic. But I don't mind sort of guided imagery, mindfulness meditation. So there's this guy from Australia that I found somewhere on an app, who does this sort of like 1 hour and 6 minute sort of like guided imagery, relaxation, helps with sleep. And so sometimes at night, if I feel like I'm a little too revved up to go to sleep, I just put in my earbuds and I don't even make it like 15 minutes in. I just sort of really drop right out. But it is amazing to sort of feel the decrease in stress, in heart rate, in anxious thoughts. I mean, remember, your anxiety is just a warning system attempting to keep you alive. It's the job of your frontal cortex to determine, are you really in a threat of danger, or are you just anxious? So breathing is really helpful, but I'm too simple to just sit and breathe. I can't do that. I'm envious of the people that can, that have mindfulness or meditation practices or yoga practices. So I like apps that help me think and help me stop thinking. So help me think in a focused way and stop thinking about other things. The mental health question. So I spend probably an hour of my day returning phone calls and emails of people to tell them that I don't have any space in my practice. And I hear the stories, and of course you hear them on the news, and that there's a shortage of mental health professionals. I don't know if there's a shortage of mental health professionals. There's a shortage of mental health professionals when a lot of people are having mental health issues. I think in a regular time we probably have enough. Just like in a regular time we have enough ICU beds in the state, but we worry about them during a pandemic when people might need ventilators. So this is how therapists work for the most part. So I will have, like this week I think I had 3 or 4 open spots in my schedule. But if someone called looking for an appointment, I would say I'm full and I'm not taking anybody. And that's because I don't trust the spots that are open this week. One might have been a cancellation. One might have been a client that went 2 weeks last week, and so their regular spot sort of was free. So what I would do is I would look at my schedule next week, and I would look at my schedule the week after that. And so if I look at my schedule next week, I have no room next week. And the week after that, I'm about half full. So I don't want to tell somebody I have an opening Thursday of this week and then not be able to see them for 3 or 4 weeks. Because in the beginning of counseling, it's really better to be seen at least weekly, so you get to know the therapist better, the therapist gets to know you and understand sort of your goals for therapy. And so if next week I ended up with like 2 or 3 kind of open spots, and then the week after that I had 2 or 3 again, then I would probably say to myself, you probably have 1 or 2 openings, Kevin. So when you're hearing from therapists that they don't have any openings, it doesn't mean they're like booked 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It means they don't have openings that they trust yet will stay open, and they don't want to set you up with expectations of, oh good, I finally got an appointment, and then disappoint you. So I would encourage you, if you're trying to find mental health people and you've gone through a list of 12 over the last 2 months, I would start circling back to some of those folks. Some therapists keep wait lists. I don't. I'm not a big believer in a wait list because I don't know how long I'm going to make them wait, and we all have the experience of being at a restaurant and sort of like the wait is going to be a half hour, and at 30 minutes you really want the table free and it's not, so the expectations of a wait list I think make it complicated. I also would sort of rather have people not wait but sort of keep looking. So I do a lot of reassuring to parents and to adults that you will get an appointment for yourself or for your kid. It's just taking longer now. And I also believe in I know there's probably more information than any of you necessarily need, but I also encourage, if you have a list of 8 people, call all 8 at the same time. You're only going to get their voicemails. Like therapists don't pick up their phones because they're usually in session. And say, my name is John. I'm looking for some therapy. I've been having a lot of anxiety lately. My insurance is Blue Cross Blue Shield. I tend to be available most afternoons, and Wednesdays I'm actually have the most flexibility. Please get back to me if there's a chance you might be able to see me in the next couple of weeks. And that way, hopefully within 24 or 48 hours, you would hear from all 8 and you would know if you have 1 or 2 or none for possibilities. But what I'm noticing is really fatiguing people looking for therapy is they call a therapist, they wait for that therapist to call back, the therapist calls back 4 days later, says they don't have an opening, they call another therapist, that therapist doesn't call them back for a week, which drives me nuts, but that's another story. And so then they go like 2 months and they still don't have an appointment. So just call a whole bunch. Just call a whole bunch. And when a therapist says they don't have any openings and you got their name from somebody, ask that therapist for names and then cross-reference them. And so if some of them aren't on your current list, then add those to your current list. But you will get in, it's just taking longer. That's all. Hope that's helpful. All right, mental health. So it's good you brought that up because, we are having more anxiety, we are having more depression, we are having more restlessness, boredom, frustration, sadness. And nature has been proven time and time and time again to improve mood and increase positivity in life. The couch, while it is comfortable, hardly improves mood or positivity in life. It provides comfort. It's familiar, it's cozy, hopefully, but it's not quite the same as nature. And, y'all live in a state that's got a lot of nature, and so, you're not really doing much nature on your flat screen TV. Just saying. Another benefit of cold weather, it actually helps prevent infections, helps us sleep better. It alleviates allergies. So if you have allergies, it helps you fight diabetes because it activates your brown fat. Did you know you had brown fat? No, you're probably thinking. Well, I encourage you to look up brown fat because brown fat is different than fat. But I'm not going to tell you about brown fat. That's just going to be one of your assignments. It is fascinating. All right, so I've made some arguments for being outdoors. I've never heard of brown fat. I just saw somebody post. Yes, check it out. I've made a lot of arguments for being outdoors, cold or not. Kids do better when they're outdoors, spending more time. They go to bed earlier, they sleep better, it's a double win, they're out of your hair. I mean, I don't know why we have this idea that, if I don't go outside and play with my dog every day, it drives me nuts. So they throw the ball, throw the frisbee, throw the stick, wear the dog out, the dog comes in, drinks something, eats something, falls asleep on the floor. Sort of like your kids will do the same thing. I don't know if they'll fetch sticks, or balls, but you can make them run around and get them really nice and tired. But if you still, after listening to all these unbelievably compelling reasons to get yourself outside, you still don't want to go out when it's cold or gray or windy. So here's some useful research. 2019 in the journal Nature, they determined, some scientists determined that the amount of time you need to be outdoors to moving your body, not just like standing in a parking lot, but moving your body, to get the physical and the mental health benefits of being outdoors is 120 minutes a week. That's it. 120 minutes, which averages out to like 17 minutes a day. So we're not talking about a big time commitment, clear your schedule, get up at 5:30 to get your outdoor time in. It's like 17 minutes. You probably watch more than 17 minutes of commercials. It is really easy to waste 17 minutes in your day. And that's all you need to do is just be outside, moving, getting your heart rate above the couch level for 17 minutes a day to be getting the mental and physical health benefits. Of course, if you want to do longer than that, that's great. You just keep racking up more and more benefits. But if you sort of feel like, I just, it's sort of like 17 minutes, Would we have complained so much as kids, when our parents would make us go outside and play? If they said, you only have to go outside and play for 17 minutes and then you can come in and watch TV again. We probably all would have just gone outside, but it was sort of like, you got to go outside and play for hours. And then we would say, oh, it's cold and these gloves are cold and, I have icicles on my nose. And, it's sort of like, yeah, so 17 minutes. So that's the good news. Questions, Jessica, because we're getting close to the end.
Yes, and there's two good ones.
Okay.
I'll just say them and let you answer them. But advice for those with disabilities,
Yep.
Those who are afraid of falling, just the challenges of getting outside.
Yep.
What strategies can they need to still be out and reap those benefits? And the second big one that a lot of people are asking about is just going back to getting that mental health care. So questions about, like, if you meet with someone and it's just, you're not vibing and it's not the right connection, what to do then. And also another question just about when meeting with their therapist, what happens when they miss their appointments? Is it harder to then get a follow-up session? So just kind of more about that process of working with a mental health professional. Okay.
So anyone that's got some physical limitations, like I think of my mom, she's in her early 80s. She's in good health, but she's not very strong. She hasn't put a lot of effort into the exercise. Let me just say that. So she's less steady on her feet. And so winter weather makes her really anxious because she's afraid she's going to fall. So I think kind of getting those they're not called crampons, maybe they are. But those things to put over your boots that give you nice big studs, big nails that can stick you in, and some poles, and they can be ski poles. They can actually be two kind of nice branches that you found, or that your neighbor found for you in the woods. But sort of like there are ways to sort of walk around and feel safe. I think sort of with other physical challenges and limitations, I think it just requires more creativity. And so I think of, if you feel really like I have no idea what I can do effectively, I sort of think like, again, we talked about being vulnerable. Put yourself out there. What are people You know, how are people getting outside and getting exercise if they have this kind of challenge? You know, you do not have to reinvent the wheel. Someone has figured out how to get outside. You're probably not going to stymie the entire universe with your question. In terms of the mental health piece, if you're not vibing, like go find somebody else. Like, it's really okay. I sort of feel like if I can connect to maybe 75% of my clients, I feel like I'm doing good. The sooner I know that I'm not feeling meaningfully connected to the other 25, the sooner I can help them find somebody that they want. Like, I had a woman who just sort of fired me. We had 5 sessions. She wasn't really vibing. And so I said, you know, do you think it'd be good to try somebody else? And she said, I just don't think you understand me. And I said, well, it's really important for you to have a therapist that you believe understands you. And I said, what do you think you need? What do you think you're looking for? And she said, I think I'd like to meet with a therapist who's an older woman and who has kids. And I'm like, well, I am neither of those. So thank you for that information. And so then I hooked her up with a therapist that I thought would get along well with her. I mean, I liked her a lot, but you know, therapists don't really want to work with people that aren't feeling a good connection. You know, we really like our jobs, so we want to feel like we're able to be helpful. Missing appointments, it depends what you miss. I mean, you blow off an appointment, you know, how soon do you like circle back around and, you know, take responsibility for missing the appointment and ask if you can reschedule. We're not a profession that like is mean. Like, it's sort of like, you missed your appointment, sorry, never seeing you again. You know, I see if I have a client who kind of is missing kind of every other appointment, I will sort of say, let's not make another appointment right now till you figure out what you're doing with your schedule, because you can't seem to, like, you're only making half the sessions. But, you know, missing an appointment because of transportation, missing an appointment because of internet connectivity, missing an appointment because, you know, all of a sudden you've got a kid throwing up at the same time as your appointment. Yeah, we get that. We get that. You can't really, I tell clients in the first session, you can't ever make my day and you can't ever piss me off. Like, it's the best of both worlds. Like, it's not the way therapy, that's why you have spouses. That's why you have children and relatives, you know, to disappoint and upset and bring joy to. So you can't make my day and you can't piss me off. So just relax and do the work. That would be my suggestion. All right, we're up against the 12 o'clock hour, Jessica.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you all for those who joined. Kim did share a link to Kevin's previous presentation, the recording. We will also do an email out to all of you with that recording, as well as this recording that you can re-listen or share to those who think it would be helpful.
Yep.
We'll also follow up with a post-event survey. We please ask that you complete that so we have feedback for our next presentations. And finally, if you're struggling with getting outside versus scrolling on the iPad or look at the TV, think, what will it give back to me? And I always say, when you go outside, nature will give so much back to you. There are some of those other choices just leave us feeling the same. Yeah. So,
and can I correct one thing, Jessica, that you said earlier?
Go ahead, Kevin.
So the 2 weeks of being outside, take a picture of yourself out in nature, and you might win a cool prize, not to mention you'll feel better, even if it's only for 17 minutes, does not start on Monday. It starts on Saturday.
Ooh, so, correct. Thank you.
Yes. Saturday is the 13th. And so you could actually think about doing something clever outside for Valentine's Day. Like I noticed at Hannaford's yesterday, because, you know, I go to the grocery store so I can see people's legs. The guy in the meat and seafood department had arranged all the shrimp and the clams and the scallops in a big heart shape in the ice. So there were like 5 layers of hearts. And I just thought, oh, that is like this cutest little thing. Like, here's this little guy, like trying to make his day sort of interesting, and it's Valentine's week. And so he turned all the seafood into big hearts. So you can go outside and make hearts somewhere. but go outside and send pictures and win prizes. How's that for
And I
motivation?
just put the link on the chat box for all of you for easy access.
Okay.
Have a
All
great
right.
day, everybody.
Bye-bye, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.